Apartments can be scary. If you don't know what you're looking for, you're moving for the first time, you're moving out of home, you're moving for a new job, whatever it may be, it can be scary. And that's fine. But I'm just going to give my 2 cents on what I think about moving. Now, I know what you're thinking. Who's this guy? Quite frankly, my identity doesn't matter. But I can tell you right now, I've lived in a few apartment complexes, and I've lived in jail. I've lived in homes. I have even lived in your home. I'm behind you right now. Obviously, I'm kidding. I've never been to jail. Now, the first thing I would recommend is finding something you can afford. Obviously, you don't want to live somewhere that you can't afford, because then you're going to get evicted, and then you're never going to be able to find a place again for quite a few years, because other apartments will look at that and be like, wow, this guy got evicted. We don't want him. We don't want him no more. Nope. That's scary to us. We don't like that. Finding out what you can afford is easy. Most apartment complexes, I can't say that word, want you to make at least 2.5 to 3 times the amount of the rent a month. So they look at your net pay. I was wrong. I had to Google it really quick. They look at your gross pay. I confused those 2 words very often, unfortunately. But they look at your gross income, so the money you make before taxes. They want to make sure that the rent isn't going to bankrupt you. However, just because you fall into that criteria of making 2.5 to 3 times the amount of the rent a month doesn't mean that you can necessarily afford it. It's better to be living somewhere where you still have extra money on the side after all your other bills versus living somewhere where your rent is taking up all of your net pay, so the amount of money that you're bringing home, because those 2 things are very different, and depending on what state you live in, they can be extremely different. Unless, of course, you commit tax fraud, which I would not recommend, because the IRS will find you significantly quicker than I already have. But on the bright side, if you get caught committing tax fraud, you will not have to worry about having a place to live because you will be in jail. The IRS does not mess around with money. But now that you have found something that you can afford comfortably, you do also need to take into consideration other expenses. You're going to have car insurance, utilities, internet, laundry, food, gas, all of that fun stuff that you need to worry about now because you decided I want to live on my own, or that decision was made for you. Regardless, that's something you got to think about now. A lot of times, it's very easy. If you want to get a roommate, you can look on Facebook, you can look on Craigslist, you can look outside, or you can just ask a friend. Be like, hey man, we're in a similar situation. What do you say we live together and make our lives a little bit more complicated for the next 1.5 years at least? However, speaking of Facebook that I had previously mentioned a few seconds ago, when it comes to looking for apartments on Facebook, I would be very weary. I myself have looked on Facebook for a few apartments, and people will send me a link and they'll ask me very vague questions, and they're like, hey, are you a criminal? Have you ever committed a crime? Are you a criminal? And I'm like, that's kind of weird that you asked me the same question multiple times and didn't ask me anything else. And then they'll be like, wow, thanks, not a criminal. Here's a link. Put your social security number in that, and then I'll tell you if you can live at this apartment, which is usually advertised as very cheap rent and an extremely beautiful apartment. To most people, that's a very clear scam. To some people, that's a deal. You can also kind of tell it's a scam just based on how the person will text you. If it's on Facebook, you're usually messaging them through Messenger, and then they'll be like, hey, okay, why don't we talk on WhatsApp? Or what is your phone number? To me, it's an immediate red flag if they text me and they don't have an iPhone. I know that not everybody has an iPhone, but for me, that's a red flag. I'm like, it's much easier to get a fake phone number on not an iPhone than it is whatever. But they'll also text you at like really inappropriate and irrational times. So I had one person ask me if I was still interested in living there, and then 2 minutes later he responded with quite a few question marks, and then responded again 2 minutes later with more question marks. And then I asked him to please stop contacting me because I'm not interested, because I know that he's trying to scam people, to which he didn't deny it. He just said, okay, the apartment's still available. And I was like, no, thank you. Please stop contacting me. And then he didn't contact me for a few days, but he texted me a few days later at 11:30 at night when I was out, and I was like, that's extremely inappropriate. Please delete my number. I am not interested. You are a scam. And then I reported him on Facebook. And yeah, that's the interactions that I've had with people like that. And they're very consistent and they're very persistent. So I would avoid that. Or if you look on Facebook, really make sure you're vetting the people and the advertisements. If they joined Facebook that year, that's kind of a red flag. If they've been on Facebook since like 2008 or whatever, then usually they're a little bit more reliable. But again, just do your own vetting. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please feel free to subscribe. And yeah, thank you.